Can you email me, where do I send the recommendation to Jayapataka's, or I have to go to his website? What's the website? What's the URL? The web address? Find out. Yeah.
And also, there's a part of the Bible
Get initiated, you want
She's applying, she's aspiring.
to? Other comments? Other comments?
Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Glories to Sri. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 O my Lord Shri Krishna, Son of Vasudeva, all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by Srila Prabhupada, Canto 4, the creation of the fourth order, Chapter 28. Ranjan becomes a woman in the next life. Today's text is 47. Atmanam shochati dinam.
Atmanam shochati dinam.
Abandham viklava shubhi.
Abandham viklava shubhi.
Stanava sitcha vipine.
Stanava sitcha vipine.
Susvaram prabharodasa. Atmanam shochati dinam.
Atmanam shochati dinam.
Abandhum Viklava Shubhi
Abandum Vilavashmi,
Stanava Sitcha Vipine
Sanavasya
Susvaram Prarurodaha Sa
Susvaram Purarosa,
Atmanam Shochati Dinam
Atmanam Sochati Dinam,
Abandhum Viklava Shubhi
Abandum Vilavashmi,
Stanava Sitcha Vipine
Sanavasya Vipine,
Susvaram Prarurodasa
Susvaram Purarosa,
Bolo.
Atmanam Sochati Dinam
Atmanam
Sochati Dinam
Abandum Viklava Shubhi
Abandam Vilavashmi,
Tanavasya Vipane
Sanavasya Vipine,
Susvaram Pravurodasa
Susvaram Purarosa,
Atmanam Sochati Dinam
Atmanam Sochati Dinam,
Abandum Viklavashri
Abandum Vilavashmi,
Nanavashya Vipane
Sanavasya Vipine,
Susvaram Pavarodasa
Susvaram Purarosa,
Atmanam Sochati Dinam
Atmanam Sochati Dinam,
Abandum Viklava Shubhi
Abandam Vilavashmi,
Tanam Ashikya Vipine
Sanavasya Vipine,
Susvaram Pravurodasa
Susvaram Purarosa, Atmanam Sochati Dinam,
Atmanam
Sochati
Dinam,
Abandum Vilavashmi,
Abandum Viklava
Sanavasya Vipine,
Sanavasya Vipine
Susvaram Purarosa,
Susvaram Pravurodasa
Atmanam Sochati Dinam
Atmanam Sochati Dinam
Abandhum Viklava Shubhi
Abandum Viklava Shubhi
Sanavasya Vipine
Sanavasya Vipine,
Susvaram Prarodasa
Susvaram Purarosa,
Word for word, Atmanam,
Atmanam
about herself, Shochati,
Sochati
lamenting,
Dinam,
Dinam, wretched,
Wretched,
Abandhum,
Abandum
without a friend,
Vilavashmi,
Viklava,
Viklava,
broken-hearted,
broken-hearted,
Ashubhi,
Ashubhi,
by tears,
tears,
Stanau,
Sanam,
her breasts, Asitya,
Asitya,
wetting,
Vipine,
Vipine, in the forest, Susvaram,
Susvaram,
loudly,
loudly,
Praroda,
Purarosa,
began to cry.
began to cry,
Sa, she. Translation, being now alone and a widow in that forest, the daughter of Vidarbha began to lament, incessantly shedding tears, which soaked her breasts and crying very loudly. Please repeat, being now alone and a widow in that forest,
being now alone and alone in the forest,
the daughter of Vidarbha
the daughter of Vidarbha
began to lament,
began to lament,
incessantly shedding tears, which soaked her breasts and crying very loudly.
crying very loudly.
Srila Prabhupada's purport, figuratively, the queen is supposed to be the disciple of the king. Thus, when the mortal body of the spiritual master expires, his disciples should cry exactly as the queen cries when the king leaves his body. However, the disciple and spiritual master are never separated because the spiritual master always keeps company with the disciple, as long as the disciple follow strictly the instructions of the spiritual master. This is called the association of Vani, words. Physical presence is called Vapu. As long as the spiritual master is physically present, the disciple should serve the physical body of the spiritual master. And when the spiritual master is no longer physically existing, the disciple should serve the instructions of the spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master is kindly opening my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So, today's text, verse, and purport, they're like a dance of metaphor, symbolic writing and literal reality. And like Prabhupada says here, figuratively, the queen is supposed to be the disciple of the king. So there's something literally going on here in the forest. Vidarbhi is, well, of course, this whole thing is an allegory, is a story. But taking the story as for what it is at face value, Malayadvaja, the king, has left. So as the queen cried when King Malayadvaja left this world, so Srila Prabhupada, he also, it's impossible to read this and not think of, as Prabhupada told us, when my spiritual master left, I let out a cry of grief. So Prabhupada describes the grief of the disciples when the spiritual master departs. So I'd just like to read that part, so beautifully presented in the Lilamrita. It's in the first volume is a lifetime preparation, and then there's a chapter called How Shall I Serve You? So Prabhupada was so sincere and humble that, and by Chris's arrangement, he wrote his spiritual master just a few weeks before Srila Bhaktisiddhanta left, as you know, if you've read the Lilamrita. And he said, I'm a householder. I can't do much directly for you, although that's not true. He actually helped launch the Allahabad and the Bombay centers. He was the driving force behind those two centers, actually, because in Allahabad's case, he was the one that gave Atulananda Brahmachari all the contacts. So those brahmacharis from the Gaudiya Math could approach people of means to get to have a center there. And then when they finally opened the center, or even before they opened the center, Prabhupada, they used to have programs, and everybody loved Abhay Babu singing. And then in the case of Bombay, Bhakti Saranga Maharaj and Sridhar Maharaj, they were trying to start a center, but they weren't having much luck. They didn't really know how to do it, But Prabhupada, he was a householder, and he knew how to manage a family. He knew how to run a business. It wasn't happening so much in Allahabad, so business-wise. So he went to Bombay with a brother of his, went to the big city, right, the gateway of India. And so his idea was to scout out possibilities of manufacturing and selling pharmaceuticals. So he wrote Srila Bhaktisiddhanta in the early part of December. I'm a householder, I can't do much. Sometimes I give a little Lakshmi. But he'd already pleased his spiritual master like anything with his writing and his speaking and his organizing skills. And Bhaktisiddhanta had marked him. This is a special person. So I'll just read this is just the last. This is the last. I'll just read. It's called "How Shall I Serve You?" Because that was the gist of his letter. Why? How is there something more I can do? You know. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta passed away from the mortal world on January 1, 1937. He had been spending his last days reading Chaitanya Chaitamrita and chanting on his beads. When a doctor had visited him, wanting to give him an injection, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had protested. "Why are you disturbing me in this way? Simply chant Hare Krishna, that's all." Amongst his last words to his disciples were, and this is we know this because there was no tape recording, but there was a disciple taking notes. So this is from his last instructions. This is just, it might have been the night before, or a day or two, at least no more than a couple of days. So I advise, this is Bhaktisiddhanta to his leading disciples, all to preach the teachings of Rupa Raghunath, disciples of Lord Chaitanya, with all energy and resources. Our ultimate goal shall be to become the dust of the lotus feet of Sri Sri Rupa and Raghunath Goswamis. You should all work conjointly under the guidance of your spiritual master, with the view to serve the absolute knowledge, the personality of Godhead. You should live somehow or other without any quarrel in this mortal world. I mean, they were already fighting. And that really concerned Abai, or Srila Bhaktisiddhanta divided that to Abai. Only for the service of Godhead. Do not please give up the service of Godhead in spite of all dangers, all criticisms, and all discomforts. Do not be disappointed, for most people in the world do not serve the personality of Godhead. Do not give up your own service, which is your everything and all. Neither reject the process of chanting and hearing of the transcendental holy name of Godhead. This is like his last will and testament, only it's an oral. It's spoken by him. You should always chant the transcendental name of Godhead with patience and forbearance like a tree, and humbleness like a straw. There are many amongst you who are well qualified and able workers. We have no other desire whatsoever. Just cooperate, work together. Okay, and now Sattva Maharaj continues. In his last days, he, meaning Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, had remained fully conscious and had given instructions until the end. He had specifically and openly ordered that the affairs of his Gaudiya Math be maintained by a 12-man governing body. That's where the GBC idea came in. Actually, that was Bhaktivinoda's idea, but it was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta who formed an institution to be managed by a governing body ultimately, which the devotees should select amongst themselves. Finally, he had said, quote, "Please accept my blessings to you all, present and absent. Please bear in mind that our sole duty and religion is to spread and propagate service to the Lord and of his devotees." Unquote. At 5:30 a.m. on January 1, he breathed his last. So that's sometimes why you see, Yogi Prabhupada even says, on the 31st December, 1936, he passed away because it was Jan 1 and the sun had not come up yet. So on the Vaishnav, by the Vaishnav reckoning, the solar day doesn't begin until the sun rises. So it was still solar day by the Vaishnav reckoning. So 5:30 a.m. on January 1, if you want to go by, the secular calendar. He breathed his last. Word very soon reached Abai in Bombay. So Prabhupada, he was in Bombay, where he had still written that letter. He wrote his spiritual master, and his spiritual master was in Puri. And Prabhupada said, a little indisposed. Actually, he was getting ready to leave. soon reached Abhay in Bombay. His immediate response was to cry with grief. So he knew that Vani is more important than Bapu, but still it's natural. You cry. Why? Because listen to this. No more the joy of an anticipated meeting. No more trips to Calcutta or Vrindavan on the plea of business just to see the tall, commanding form of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, the quote, evangelic angel. Where's that from? The poem. Right. Vyas Puja, right. 35. Yeah. This sense of never meeting again was difficult to bear. Philosophically, Abhay knew that there was no reason to lament. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati had come into the world to execute the mission of Lord Chaitanya, and now it was required that he leave this place and go to another, where he would again engage in the same activity. Yet even armed with this philosophy, Abhay felt all alone, because we're not philosophical beings, we're sentient beings. Absolute is sentient, thou hast proved. Impersonal calamity, thou hast moved. So we feel these things. Abhay felt all alone. His two great well-wishers were gone. His father had passed in 1930. His father and now his spiritual master. But he felt grateful that he had received a special mercy because he was specially sincere. So he'd written that letter, and then Bhaktisiddhanta had written him those special personal instructions to him. A final instruction, just 2 weeks before his spiritual master's departure. Abhay read his letter again and again. There would not be another. That was the last letter. The intimate talks and meetings were now gone, but by this letter especially, Abhay would live in the instructions of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. The letter had come just in time. Now he knew for certain, no matter what anyone else said, how to please his spiritual master and stay linked with Krishna. Following his order, he would conquer the feeling of loss at the disappearance of his most affectionate well-wisher. Yeah, there's a good example of how, well, the ultimate example as being our founder Acharya, how to respond. Yeah, there's naturally grief, but then there's continuation too, through serving the Vani. And that's what we're going to talk about next. So in his purport, Prabhupada describes how disciples serve in separation by following the Guru's instructions. So here's another, this is an example. So we just heard about how Prabhupada responded to his spiritual master leaving. So in the Lilamrita, but especially I like the poetry version of the Lilamrita, the things that Satsrup Maharaj wanted to say to and about Prabhupada in a poetic way, right at the end of the poetry version of the Lilamrita. Okay, so just as Bhaktisiddhanta passed away in Jan 1, 1937, so this, there's two, it's a short thing. It just says November 14th, 1977, when Prabhupada left. There was no last minute change. In the center of a room full of devotees, all singing the holy names, he went back to Godhead. Yeah, Prabhupada was just on the disappearance bed, and he wasn't, he was just the same person. He wasn't like overcome by grief or pain. I mean, an ordinary person would have been overcome by pain because it was so, the doctors couldn't believe it. How was he? The Kaviraj said that, and then I just was reading also that, it was on a memory tape, that Abhiram Prabhu was saying that the doctor in England, we're going to get to England too, how when because Prabhupada had been telling the devotees, look, whatever you do, don't take me to the hospital. I don't want to go to a hospital. But then when Prabhupada, with practically no body left, went to England in September of 77, it was a horrible, so arduous. He was lying, I think Upendra cleared out a whole section of seats so Prabhupada could just lie down on the plane. But then there was a big delay in Rome, and then Prabhupada, of course, he's experiencing so much discomfort traveling, in that condition. And then they get to England, and there's things we're going to share about that between Prabhupada and the devotees. But then there was a real, besides the emergency of what was going on, there was a medical emergency because Prabhupada basically he was experiencing kidney failure, and so he couldn't pass. The whole evacuation system was going haywire, and he was getting uremia, urine poisoning. It was coming into his bloodstream. So even though Prabhupada said, don't take me to the hospital, it was getting so bad that the devotees made a decision, at the advice also of another devotee doctor there at the manor. Look, Prabhupada's going to pass away right now unless you take him to Watford, which was the nearest place, which is a general hospital. So Watford General, there was a procedure that the doctor did, and it was successful, and it relieved the immediate situation. So, okay. September 77, Prabhupada went to England. Yeah, he wanted to go to Gitanagari. That's what he was. He was on his way to Gitanagari. And then he told Bhakti True Maharaj in a letter, and then I'll meet you in Hawaii. He's practically doesn't have a body left. And he's still because he wants to enthuse the devotees. He wants to inspire the devotees. And they were inspired, but they were also aghast because Prabhupada looked like a skeleton. Okay, so after Prabhupada left, then here's the reaction. Anyway, I'll just read it. Service and separation. Yeah, okay, so it's a 2-page verse, free verse. Then there was grief all over the world for the devotees of Krishna. In Africa, they cried. In America, one devotee walked out of the house and into the woods. I don't know who that was. Or they hung up the phone and they cried wherever there were devotees. Yet, it's like Prabhupada. He cried with grief, but then he had his order. So yet, the sincere soon noticed, somehow, we are living still. Our purpose is still strong. Our duties have not lessened, and the need seems even greater. To rescue the fallen souls, there is still someone to please. Srila Prabhupada is present. The day before he passed away, his disciples were Krishna conscious, and the day after he left, they were still Krishna conscious. But if their lives depended on him, how was it possible to live after he left? The answer came clear. This was service and separation. They were actually experiencing it now. It wasn't theoretical. It wasn't something they just read in a book. Prabhupada wrote this back in early 73. But now they're actually, this was service and separation. What before they had read in books as the mood of the gopis, they now found in themselves as an ever-present strength, as sure as the vital air, sure as the rising sun, as sure as Krishna himself. Prabhupada was present in his order. So this is Vani. Service and separation became union with him. The books all confirmed it as even stronger than his physical presence, which had come and gone. By service and separation, his presence became an open love to whoever was sincere. Now, from the smaller to the greatest, all can enter his presence. Whoever cares and serves, Srila Prabhupada is still in charge of the faithful heart. He is still flowing nectar to the river of his followers, and his movement won't collapse because parampara is guided by the Lord's own hand. Got it? Beautiful, huh? Ooh. Okay, and there's more. It gets better. Okay, so yeah, I remembered, because I'm always viewing these memories, DVDs, tapes, which you can now do right in the database. That number. Have you noticed that? Did you go?
No, but I've noticed it.
Yeah, that's right in the. It's never before we're in the database. It's right in the new update of the database. You can just click on the Vani base. Okay, so in Srila Prabhupada Memories number 85, there's two of my godbrothers, and they were both in the manor in September 77th, and they both had memories, and they were both very moving. So Akandidi, you know, anybody know Akandidi? He came here. Yeah, he's with the BI. Yeah, he's really tall. He's from Wales. Nice devotee. And Krishna Kshetra Maharaj. Do you know him? Yeah. Okay. They both recount Srila Prabhupada's last visit to the manor. So Akandidi, this is a far out thing. He said that for one thing, Prabhupada was so fragile when he was at the manor that Prabhupada requested that when they do Guru Puja, and Prabhupada was actually there, of course, for Guru Puja. So when they do Guru Puja, that they not sing Shri Guru Charana Padma. So the devotee's like, huh? And so it was explained to them, this must have come from Prabhupada, through probably Tamal Krishna Maharaj, that Prabhupada was so, his condition was so fragile that the emotion that he would experience in his heart, it would be too much for him to hear that song. Yeah. So Akandidi said, so we were instructed just to sing Hare Krishna for Guru Puja, and that was okay. Yeah. And then so then Prabhupada was there for about a week or 5 days or whatever it was. And then, you know, he had that whole thing where he had to go to Watford General, he had to have that procedure. And then it was just, and then Prabhupada and his party, Upendra and TKG and Aviram, realized that they couldn't go any further. He couldn't go to America. He couldn't go to Gita Nagari. So they went back to Vrindavan. And then even though the devotees, you know, at the manor, well, it wasn't just the manor, because Prabhupada was coming to the manor, people from all over Europe came, right? And Prabhupada, the only special darshan he gave were to the German devotees, the German brahmacharis, because they were No, it wasn't just brahmacharis. Yeah, Pritu and Manidhar, they were distributing books too. Anyway, they were number one that year. They were number one as they were distributing the book. They were leading everybody, you know. So Prabhupada gave them his special. He let them, you know, come in and have a. I don't know how they could even hear him because his voice was so weak. But anyway, so then Prabhupada, and then he left, and the devotees at the manor had this. It was like it was all over the movement. Prabhupada, we couldn't conceive of him leaving, but it was obvious he was leaving, from an empirical point of view, that he was leaving. His body was dwindling, and he weighed about 60 pounds, and his skin and bone. And so anyway, and then November 14th, 1977 happened, and they got the word, just like we all did. And then the Kandidi said, as soon as we heard Prabhupada left, all of a sudden our understanding of Prabhupada transformed, because we always knew where Prabhupada was in the world physically. Oh, he's in Nairobi. Oh, he's in Caracas. Oh, he's in Vrindavan. You always had this idea of Prabhupada, even though Vani and Vapu was preached, that Prabhupada was in one place. He was localized. But then, as soon as he left, Akandadi said, we all had this realization, and it was by Prabhupada's mercy we're having this realization, that now he's not just traveling with a few devotees, but he's expanded now. He's everywhere. He's equally accessible to everybody through the Vani, but also just personally, he's like as good as the all-pervading super soul, right? And so that was very. And he was saying this wasn't just theoretical. We were all checking in with each other, and wow, Prabhupada's here. So they weren't, even though they were grief-stricken, but they were amazed that Prabhupada, how he'd done that. So, and now Krishna Kshetra Maharaj. What did he say? Yeah, so Krishna Kshetra. Srila Prabhupada, when he was receiving that worship, that last Guru Puja, he said that we all had this sense that Prabhupada was clearly saying goodbye and thank you. There's no, you've heard this before, but he was no longer in the Madhyam mood. He was in the Uttam mood, and he was just expressing gratitude, and he was crying, and the devotees were crying. Thank you. And now, this was on Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja day. Prabhupada was there for Janmashtami and Vyasa Puja. So now we turn to TKG's diary. September 7th, Vyasa Puja day, the 82nd appearance day of Srila Prabhupada by the Indian, reckoning, because as soon as you're born, you're one. 82nd. Although, in 1896 to 1977, that sounds like 81, right? But no, 82nd. By the Indian reckoning. I wish Srila Prabhupada well as he arose. So he's with Prabhupada in his quarters. You've been to Prabhupada's quarters? The manor. Yeah. Beautifully kept by Sarvamangala. And arose, as he arose, and glorified him on his appearance day. He remembered his childhood. and said, my maternal uncle, his mother's father, gave me the name Nandulal. Since he appeared on the Nandotsav day, they would call me Nandu. Another nickname was Koka, baby. In the morning, Srila Prabhupada came into the temple and saw their beautiful lordships, Sri Sri Radha Gokulananda, which he established in 73 on Janmashtami. Although they'd already been worshipped in the Pandal in India, in Bombay. Yeah. There, the combined forces of English, Swiss, Swedish, and German devotees ecstatically performed kirtan. Yeah, so they were, yes, you can see it. People from all over Europe were coming. Afterwards, by the grace of Srila Prabhupada, I got the opportunity, this is Tamal, to recount in a nutshell his glorious life's activities. My talk appeared pleasing to His Divine Grace, who supplied a few dates of which I was uncertain. At one point, when I was describing his Guru Maharaja's instruction to spread these teachings to the English-speaking world, Prabhupada added, by books. Right? Remember in Radhakund? You ever get money, print books? Buy books. This emphasis on the books served as a guide for me to emphasize them throughout the talk, as they form the basis of Srila Prabhupada's service to his Guru Maharaj. Several times, Upendra had to wipe the tears from Prabhupada's eyes. It took 45 minutes to describe Prabhupada's achievements, even briefly. Now, what TKG didn't say, but what she said, I was surprised he didn't put this in his diary. Maybe I don't know. I guess, yeah, because sometimes the written word you can't say as much, the spoken word you recall more. He said that what he was giving, he was giving Prabhupada's highlights of Prabhupada's life. And then Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, of course, Srila Prabhupada only met his spiritual master, 5 or 6 times. And then Prabhupada stopped him, and he said to Tamal Maharaj, there was never a moment when I was not with my spiritual master. And then, and then Krishna Kshetra Maharaj, in his memory on that DVD 85, he said, as Tamal Krishna Maharaj was recounting the highlights of Prabhupada's life, Prabhupada was nodding in approval, but it was very clear that he was not only nodding in approval of the way of what Tamal Krishna Maharaj was saying, that it was true, it was factual, but that by the end he was nodding, he was approving that his mission had been a success and that his mission would continue through us. And that's what he was approving, that he was successful because it wouldn't end with him. And all was well. All right, well, I would just like to ask you, because Prabhupada, of course, is not just for his 4,780 Diksha disciples, he's for everybody, he's founder Acharya. So how can we cultivate that same union and separation with Prabhupada, who was able to reciprocate with all generations of his followers? Do you ever think about that, whether you've known about Prabhupada just recently or, for 50 plus years, or how can we cultivate that union and separation? Yes, I saw Lalita.
I think by really studying his books and really attempting to understand thoroughly his mood and his instructions, and then seek to carry those instructions out.
Yeah, he lives forever by his divine instructions. That's how Prabhupada dedicated the Bhagavatam. Remember that? On the 26th anniversary of the disappearance day of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, he lives forever by his divine instructions, and the follower lives with him. And that he was affirming that generally, but specifically to him. So you're right in Prabhupada's move. Thank you.
That was fantastic, Prabhu. Thank you. I'll share a little bit, but I'm saving some of it for Vyas Puja, because I have a plan for my Vyas Puja offering this year. Because in Mayapur, every single day, you were there for some of the time, I was in the Samadhi.
Yeah.
And I was going in there every day and chanting my 16 rounds.
Yeah.
And praying to Srila Prabhupada every single day that I want to really get to know you. I really want to get to know you. And I felt this prayer was, wasn't like overwhelmingly answered. But when I left Mayapur, I got this Prabhupada box, which all of Prabhupada's classes on it. And then when I was in Vrindavan, I continued the same program of going to Prabhupada's Samadhi in Prabhupada's room. And my last day in India, I felt, I had an experience that I can't describe, probably the most intense spiritual experience of my life in Prabhupada's Samadhi, as I was saying goodbye to Prabhupada.
In his Samadhi?
Yeah.
Not in his room.
In his Samadhi.
Samadhi.
I just had this feeling of gratitude for Prabhupada, and I felt Prabhupada reciprocated. And I was weeping for about 10 minutes. And but in that moment, I had a realization just that, when we really give our hearts to Prabhupada, rather than, there's so many reasons to join this movement, even to just basic prasadam, you can join the movement for prasadam, you can join it because it's cool, it's you get to dress cool, you get to meet nice people, it's a place to stay, I got friends, I got a social setting, but when you have, and studying Bhakti Vaibhava, of course, increased this, was that reading and studying like that and seeing how these teachings have transformed. But when you come to the point that you're in it for Prabhupada, that becomes your motivation in the morning to get up, that I'm in it for Prabhupada. And it's a life-changing experience. And in that way, I feel Prabhupada, he deals with you in a different way. And there becomes just a loyalty and a love and a feeling of wanting to be with Prabhupada that it's very profound. And that was my experience. That was the whole, everything, my entire trip in India, that was the climax and the high point of the whole thing, that Prabhupada is more with us than any human being on this planet is with us. He's more with us than I'm with you, and I'm with any of you, And we can have that realization by, prayer to Prabhupada, feeling that desire. So I was just, thank you. Nice class.
Thank you. Sound like a beautiful, sound like you really got the mercy at the end. All right, anyone else? Pavitra? Where were you when Prabhupada left? Yeah, it's too much. It's almost too much, isn't it?
I was only in the movement for 4 months, and Prabhupada initiated me in September of 77 on Janmashtami. He was in Vrindavan, so Rameshwar did the initiation on behalf of Srila Prabhupada. So I'm like a baby Prabhupada disciple. And I was in Los Angeles. So my whole spiritual life has been serving Srila Prabhupada's Bani, because I never saw him. I had plenty of opportunities, but I was always in Maya, you know. But yeah, I was distributing his books, so that's why Gopal Bhatta was the temple president,
Right.
and he authorized it because I was going out and distributing books. He said, "Oh, we gotta let this devotee be initiated," you know.
Who did you go out with?
What's that?
Who was your god sisters that you went out with?
Who's my god sister? What?
Who were you going out with? Was it to LAX or where were you going?
We did LAX for a while, but I didn't like being inside. I wanted to be outside. So, oh God, Jadharani took me out for the first time.
Oh wow, she was really good.
She was. The first thing we ever did, we got out of the van, we went into a Hallmark card store, and I'm like, you know, this is new to me, and I'd never done this before. Jadharani starts asking the ladies that are looking at cards, you know, trying to distribute books and asking for donations, and I'm just watching her. And the lady at the store goes, "What are you doing? You can't do that in here." And Jadharani goes, "I thought everything belonged to God." And the lady just went ballistic. I was
The store
laughing.
manager said that.
Huh?
The store manager said that?
Yeah. And she'd take us to a golf course where men were teeing off. They were just practicing teeing off and just tapping them on the shoulder. And they were giving us money.
That's too
And they're taking books. I mean, she just, you know, she was great.
pretty outrageous.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, yeah. Thank you.
That, you know, like, there's so many disturbing things that are in our movement, you know, like we're dealing with a lot, you know, we deal with a lot of stuff. And in Mayapur, it's kind of like you hear a lot of stuff and you know, like people will let you down in this movement. The Prabhupada will never let us down. And that was the thing that hit me so hard, was that like ISKCON is bigger than what we see. ISKCON is not just, you know, a bunch of temples and people and the GBC.
Yeah.
The real ISKCON is Srila Prabhupada's Vani. And that, like, if you're serving that, that's the real experience of Krishna consciousness that's so powerful, so profound, is that no matter where you're at or what you're doing, if you're connected to that Vani of Prabhupada, like you're in ISKCON and you're in it as much as, you know, the devotees in the 60s and 70s were in it, if you have that connection. And whatever we may see appears like, you know, things that are stressing us out, yeah, that we have to deal with them. But if we lose sight of that Vani, that's just right. It's like that verse, Ratirtam yat pratiyeta na pratiyeta chatmani, you know, if it's not connected with Krishna, it has no value. And so in our movement, if it's not connected with Prabhupada, it has no value.
Yeah.
Has no value. It's an illusion.
Yes. Yeah, physical is temporary and vibration is eternal, as Prabhupada told my god sister Rukmini. So, yeah, and even if, as I've shared, you know, how I was on the morning walk in Miami and I was like a groupie and I didn't even hear the question, asked and Prabhupada didn't hear Prabhupada's answer. Even though I was this far from Prabhupada's head, I was nowhere near him. I was nowhere near him. And that's what Krishna told me. That heart transmission. It wasn't a voice in the sky, it wasn't skywriting, it was just a very clear, yes, you are right in back of Prabhupada's head, you are nowhere near Srila Prabhupada. And that's what convinced me. The real association is the vibration, the Vani. Yeah. Okay, I think you want to say one more. Oh, was it 9 yet? Okay.
When I was doing the initiate on Janmashtami, I had this feeling of, you know, like I was being protected, and the whole day I just felt like I was being hugged by somebody, And I didn't realize it consciously, but as the day came to an end, I was walking back to the ashram, and I actually felt Srila Prabhupada's arm around me. I mean, not, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then I
Internally.
realized
Yes.
why I felt like that.
Yeah.
And Prabhupada had been, embracing me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, on that note, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. And tomorrow we'll actually hear what in her grief Queen Vidarbhi said. And it's like, wow, it's so intense.
I go.